Hello, everybody, and welcome back. In this week's video, I want to go over, in my opinion, the 5 biggest misconceptions about the symbols within the practice of Usui Reiki Ryoho, and I'm going to debunk each of them. All of this is my opinion, of course. There's no right or wrong with the practice of Reiki, especially Usui Reiki Ryoho, but there is a direction that I think we need to take, which is clearly outlined in the practice, and I think many teachers, perhaps the teachers that you're considering learning from, get all of these points wrong because the roots of the practice have been forgotten. So I think that this is a really important video to make, and I hope that you find it very beneficial. So one of the core concepts that attracts a lot of people to Reiki is, of course, the symbols. And there's a lot of hyperbole around the symbols. There's a lot of big, grandiose language that is utilized or implored when we are looking at the symbols and how they are going to affect your journey with the practice, what they can do, how they can impact your connection to Reiki, how it can channel through your body, and all that type of stuff. So let's dive into it. And I hope that this video is beneficial for your journey. If you're new to the practice of Reiki, if you're considering, learning it and you're considering working with a teacher, then these are going to be fundamental questions to take into your Shoden course or your level 1 course. If you're a seasoned practitioner, then maybe we can look at the language that's being used as you teach to help streamline things and make things a little bit more simplified and connecting them further back to the roots of the practice. So the first point that I want to get into is that Reiki, the symbols within Reiki are not magic spells. They're not things that we can, utilize in the external environment to affect some sort of change. I hear this all the time in the Reiki world that people are going to put chokure in a room to, clear the energy, or they're going to put chokure or a symbol like seihiki over their food to make the energy of their food better. All of these things are only misconceptions in the mind of the person that's saying it, full stop. I can't invoke a symbol like chokure, for instance, to make all of this, surrounding, this beautiful natural surrounding that I'm in, stronger or more clean. None of that makes any sense. That's only in my mind. And this is a very seductive way to teach Reiki because it helps to show, first off, that the teacher is giving something to the student that the student can then get tangible results from. So there becomes a somewhat of a negative feedback loop here. Oh, the teacher told me that I can put this symbol on this food and that makes it more nutritious, or that I can clean the energy of these rooms now with chokure. That makes me a really powerful healer. All of that is off the mark. So they're not magic. There's nothing, special about the symbols in that we are demanding externalized feedback or externalized results. If we practice with the symbols in this regard, we're completely missing the point. The symbols are a fully internalized journey. They're only to work on the nature of my mind. That's it. And this is shown time and time again in the core teachings of Reiki. For instance, in Usui Reiki Ryoho, the full name of the practice is Shin Shin Kaizen Usui Reiki Ryoho, which means the continuous improvement of my mind and then my body, which was first talked about by Usui Sensei. Nowhere in the original teachings at all does it say that I'm going to use a symbol on the external world to make something happen. If your teacher is talking like that, if the books you're reading are talking like that, they're simply not factual. They're not correct. I can't do anything to the external world because it's all an expression of me. It's an expression of my internal environment. So the symbols have to be looked at from an internal state. All right. Now, another question that I get, and this is point number 2, is that we have to draw the symbols correctly. So, of course, I utilize the symbols in my practice. Of course, I teach it to my students, and I utilize them when my mind is busy, when my mind is distracted. So, for instance, if I sit down to give a Reiki session to a client, or if I'm working on myself and my daily self-practice, if my mind is busy, like, wow, I've got so much stuff to do today, it's a busy day, that I'm stressed, whatever it might be, then I would turn to the symbols to calm down that state, which is really go back inside, let it settle, let it rest. And this is the point that I want to really clarify here. When I do that, maybe I'm drawing them with my right hand or my left, it doesn't make any difference. or maybe I'm saying them. Maybe there's times where I want to be really still, and even the action of moving my hand is going to give a little bit of disturbance in my practice. So I might just say them in my mind. So please don't get caught up in the idea that you can't draw them correctly, or that you're not drawing it correctly, or you forgot, whatever it might be. Just be with the meaning of the symbol. The symbol in totality has its meaning. So what I mean by that is, if you draw the symbol, that's perfect. If you recite the symbol, that's perfect. If you just simply meditate on the meaning of the symbol, that's perfect. All of those are going to get you to the core efficacy, as it were, of the symbols themselves. So whatever path you take is the correct one, as long as you're bringing them inside. The symbols have an incredibly deep meaning and story and history, and it's far too much to go into in this video. Of course, I teach it in my classes, but the normal version of the symbols is far too simplified. If we look at the symbols as just an externalized thing, then we're looking at results. We're looking for feedback from the external world, and we're missing the point entirely. Well, maybe not entirely, but you can definitely go a lot deeper. And why am I saying that here? Because if we get wrapped up on, am I drawing the symbols correctly? Am I, sitting with this in the right way? Then we're missing the point. The point is Shin Shin Kaizen. It's this continual improvement of my mind and my body. So if I get caught in a loop about did I do it correctly or so on, then I'm not actually sitting with the symbol. So try to let go of all of that. I oscillate between all three of those ways that I've just said. I will draw them sometimes, I'll recite them sometimes, and I'll simply just sit with the meaning of it. That might be me reciting the meaning of Chokure, which means the truth, the straight, correct, true nature of our being. And it's, again, there's way too much to go into in the meaning of the symbols here, but I might just meditate on that, and that helps me to connect to Chokure. So I don't have to worry about, do I draw it? Do I need to move my hands here? And so on. That's not the point. Okay. I hear this one, the third point, all the time as well, that the symbols are somehow sacred, that they're secret, and that if you haven't become a Shinpuden Reiki master, then you can't know the symbols, you can't talk about them, you can't share them. Anybody, I'm going to say this flat out, anybody who says this, a teacher or a Reiki student or whatsoever, they do not have a connection to the origin of Usui Reiki Ryoho. They are teaching a heavily modified, westernized, concatenated version of Reiki, and the connection to the roots is simply not there. And why am I saying that? Because if they knew the roots of the practice, they would know that every one of the symbols is clearly visible all throughout Japan. It's clearly visible all throughout Mount Kurama, for instance, where Reiki is from. And further to that, we can go a little bit deeper into the symbols, and we can look at Chokure and Seihiki as really being the only two symbols that there are, because Honjaze Shone and Daikomyo, the distant symbol, quote unquote, and then the master symbol, quote unquote, respectively, those are just words. They're not even symbols. So there's not anything that is secret or that has to be passed on, like whispered to people, or you can never, draw them and you have to memorize them and all that stuff. All of that is incorrect. All of it is incorrect. So, if you are receiving such teaching, then I would really encourage you to find a teacher that is deeper connected to the roots of the practice, because what they're saying is simply not correct. And in my opinion, it only serves to further hinder the incorporation, understanding, and further acceptance of Reiki, because the practice is then being talked about as kind of like a cult or like this mystical thing that is like so magical and da-da-da. It's not. It's not at all. The symbols are plainly visible. Every time that I'm in Japan, for instance, for my pilgrimages, we sit in front of the symbol of Daikomyo. We are literally sitting in a temple where it's carved into one of the main pillars of the temple. We see the symbol Seihiki all over the place. We see it in temples, we see it in manuscripts, we see it in carvings on, beautiful mountain paths. We see it all over the place. So anybody who is suggesting that these things are secret and that they can't be shared, please, I would encourage you to find a better teacher, a teacher with a deeper connection to the practice because you're just learning something that is even further removed from the practice itself and from its original teachings. I think, and I hope, that most people want to learn something correctly, not learn something that's heavily modified so that you're going to have to go back and relearn it in the future. Okay, so really look into that language and wonder, why does it have to be so secret? If the symbols are just internalized and they're just a journey into yourself and they're just working on your own mind, then what difference does it make if the rest of the world knows? Because that's still being framed from my mind. So if I have this type of mindset, then I'm always looking out. I'm never looking in. And then further, we have to recognize how dangerous this mindset is. And I don't mean that to sound like over the top. Dangerous here, I think, is appropriate, because if you're sitting and learning from a teacher that fully believes that they are giving you something secret and powerful and that you're the only one that can get it, or you're the only one that can verify how powerful it is or whatever, then you're becoming fully subservient to that teacher. And that's not giving you space to go into your own self, your own trajectory, your own path with the practice and letting it unfold as you need it to for you, because the teacher in this regard is the person that unlocked these secret magic powers to you. That's a dead end. That's not the right way to go in the practice, in my opinion. Okay. All right, so the fourth point that I want to cover here is that the Reiki symbols are somehow the most important aspect of the practice of Reiki. This couldn't be further from the truth. The most important aspect of the practice of Reiki is Onen Rits. It's this idea that hopefully my practice of Reiki, when I sit down on the mat and I do my own self-work, that becomes the way that I live my life. Onen Rits is a core concept to Usui Reiki Ryoho, in that it is helping us to try our best to live every moment in our day at peace, regardless of what comes. That's why we practice Reiki. We practice Reiki not to heal. It's not to beam energy into other people or to do anything mystical or anything magical. All of those are distractions. What we do to practice Reiki is to try to let go of the things that I hold on to that keep me in disbalance from being at peace. And if we do that, and if we look at the practice like this, then that becomes the journey of healing. It becomes the journey of peace. It becomes the journey of relaxation and so on. All of those things are byproducts of Onen Rits. So if we continue to stay fixated on the idea of the magical power of the symbols and that you can just choke away everything to make it more powerful and all that type of stuff, then we're never going to get to the point of Onen Rits. Our mind is always staying distracted. Now, I know that these things might be somewhat difficult to hear, because when we start to learn Reiki, maybe we want to believe in something. Maybe we want to believe that we now have a superpower, or that the person that we learned from is like, whatever, super connected to the energy or whatever it might be. Maybe we want to believe that the symbols we've just learned will have some magical abilities to heal everything or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about here. At some point, we are all walking this journey, and that journey inside will be difficult. So at some point, we might need a little bit of hope or a little bit of belief. That's fine. What I'm saying here is to not get attached to the story. Don't get attached to the belief or the externalized practice of the symbols, because if we do that, then we stop our journey altogether. We are no longer walking towards Onen Rits, but we're actually walking towards suffering and attachment, and we never actually get out of it. So we can't stay locked in our own, weakness or insecurities or lack of self-belief or whatever. We all have those things. I have those things. Everybody has those things. We practice Reiki to let go of those things. That's the whole point. So you should, in my opinion, seek out a practice that helps you to let go of those things as slowly as you need to. That's not the point. This is not a race. It's not, there's no finish line. There's no medal if you get there at the end. The point is, you should be moving forward to your own peace and liberation, not towards something that is going to further the belief that you've discovered something mystical or magical or so on. That's only furthering your suffering. And the last point that I wanted to really get at here with the symbols is that you can somehow use your energy or your Reiki or your chi or prana, whatever you want to call it, to like power up these symbols, or that they can be used to affect change in the external world, or that they can be downloaded or whatever. This is a huge, in my opinion, this is why I wanted to save it to the end, because I think this is a huge problem in the practice of Reiki. We will all experience something mystical, things we can't understand, we can't explain, supernatural things, metaphysical things, connections to deities. All of those things are simply just the recognition of you healing. If we look at Reiki, Reiki means the energy of all things in the entire universe of which you are a part of. So as we practice Reiki, we are simply turning further into that energy, and we're able to sit with it. As we sit with it, we see a story. We see a story of you. I see the story of me. That's it. That's it. Full stop. So if I utilize the symbols to work on my own story and to try to cultivate peace in myself, then more of the story will become visible. That's perfect. However, if I was to then go try to teach that story to other people, like I just sat through this, and let's say we can talk about these things in the grandiose language that they often have. I went on a pilgrimage, and it was, 5 weeks of solitary whatever practice with all these people, whatever. And then I came back and I've downloaded these new symbols, and they're so much more powerful than everybody else's or whatever. All of this is simply the story of the person that did it. It's not your story. And if we fall into the belief that they have somehow unlocked something that's more powerful, then we are not following the practice of Reiki. Again, full stop. You're actually regressing. You're going back. You're locking yourself into attachment and beliefs and the busyness of the mind. So if we find that the symbols are being talked about in a way that sounds superhuman or supernatural, this to me is a big red flag. We need to move away from those things. If they are being talked about as like a more powerful symbol, I get this all the time with, many different practices of Reiki have so many symbols. And I know I've covered this on the channel here before. All of those symbols are a belief. Even the symbols in Usui Reiki Ryoho, to be fair, are a belief. If I am being locked into the nature of belief, then I want it to be the simplest belief possible, because I want to let go of all belief. So if I see a practice of Reiki that has, maybe like 25 symbols or 300 symbols, I hear this about Tibetan Reiki quite often, where it's like, oh, there's 300 symbols and they're only practiced by these monks and they've been forgotten in the mountains and so on. That's all a story. And that story is just going to lead to my own delusional belief about myself and about my powers with the practice. So I need to work to let go of all of those things. This is a question of your journey into yourself. It's a question of your journey towards more and sustained peace in yourself. So we should make that journey honest. We should make that journey correct and straight and true, like Chokure suggests. We should meet it with honesty and humility, like Seihiki suggests. And then maybe we can recognize the journey itself is only your journey. And if we go into that journey further, then there's the whole universe at our doorstep, because we're part of the same thing, as Honjaze Shone suggests, the distance symbol. And then if we can be at peace in that moment, then we might finally see Daikomyo. We might recognize that Daikomyo is not something that is found on Mount Kurama or from your teachers or anywhere. It's not found anywhere except in your own internal stillness. That has to be first. Everything beyond that, if your trajectory with the symbols, if your understanding of Reiki, and by that I always mean Usui Reiki Ryoho, I don't mean any other type of Reiki. If your journey is confusing that, if it's making more layers and making more attachments, making more suffering, making more busyness in your mind, then you're moving away from Daikomyo. You're moving away from Onsen Ritsume, and you are actually staying in the repetitive cycle of attachment and suffering. So I hope that these 5, kind of common misconceptions with the symbols in the practice of Reiki help you with your journey. I know there's some points that I'm making here that might sound absolute, but I stand by those. I mean those fully. Because the point I'm trying to get here is to see your journey with Reiki as one of internal peace. Anything that creates a story, a belief, a superstition, anything that gets you to believe that you have learned from somebody who can upgrade you or give you more power, this is not Reiki. This is a delusion, and you're staying locked in the cycle of attachments. We all want to let go of those attachments. So simplify the practice and really step into your understanding of the symbols and of the practice of Reiki as one towards Onen Rits, as it was always meant to be talked about, as it was first taught by Usui Sensei, but most importantly, as Mount Kurama shows us. It's all there in front of you. We have to let go of the misconceptions. So I hope that these 5 misconceptions help you with your journey of the practice. As always, everybody, thank you so much for the support of the channel. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the video, and I wish you the very best in your continuation with your journey with Usui Reiki Ryoho. Be well, everybody, and in Gosho to all.